kind of I wanted to kind of encourage a lot of you guys that have just gotten out of prison, a lot of you guys that are, you're getting out here and you're dealing with COVID, and things aren't working out, aren't moving at a fast enough pace. The reality is, even for me, like coming out here and dealing with GPS monitor, and getting to know my family and my loved ones, and just seeking employment, just various things that I've had to deal with, it can be real discouraging, real disheartening. And so, with that being said, I kind of wanted to encourage you guys, that ultimately sometimes we work towards things, and and the results aren't coming fast enough. But that's the thing about progress. The thing about progress is we kind of step in faith, and we hope that the things we do ultimately, that's going to be of some substantial benefit. And I say that because I just published this book and started this page, and I actually just got a copy of the book, and I have a section in there on dehumanization. And so, when I was a younger man, I didn't understand what that terminology meant. When I went to prison, I couldn't even fill out an envelope to write home. I had very little education, very little aspirations. I thought ultimately the only thing I'd be able to do is sell drugs, and maybe open up a spot, and that was the only way I'd ever be able to do anything substantial with my life. And for you people that don't understand the prison system, I can only tell you what I went through. And so, being a young man, I was homeless, and I slept on people's couches, and I stayed where I could, and I ate where I could, and I borrowed my friends' clothes, and just a lot of uncertainty and instability. And so when I was 21 years old, I was committing a burglary, and I was trying to run, and the cops ended up shooting me 2 times, and I ended up going to prison. And so I can remember after I was arrested, I got sent to the University Hospital in San Antonio, Texas, and I had a bullet hole in my chest. I had a bullet hole in my hip. I had 4 bullet holes in 2 entrances and 2 exits. And so I can remember being in that hospital bed and being handcuffed to the side of that hospital bed. And I remember my brother was slapping me in my face, and he was trying to wake me up. And I can remember how disappointed he was that even though I had 4 bullet holes in me, and I wasn't going anywhere, that I was still handcuffed to this hospital bed. And I had just turned 21 years old. I was a kid. And so from there, I stayed there about a week, and I ended up going to the county jail, and they stuck me in this an isolation cell, and there was no windows in there. I didn't have any contact with anybody. The only time they opened the door was to feed me. They fed me 3 times a day, and then they gave me pain pills to kind of help with the damage from the bullet holes. But I remember it was a real lonely, isolated, period. No visits. I didn't have any. I couldn't see my family. It was just a terrible situation for anybody to have to go through. And so shortly thereafter that, a few months later, after I start healing up and they're packing all my wounds and everything, I get sentenced to 12 years, and I signed for those 12 years. I was an uneducated kid from a dysfunctional family. I didn't have a lot of support, so I didn't really have any choices. I didn't know too much about the criminal justice system. I didn't know anything about law, and so I signed for 12 years. And so during the course of being in this county jail, and constantly being given painkillers, and so now it's time for me to go to prison. So once I get transferred to prison, they put me on a bus, and they strip me out, and they put me in a jumper, and they handcuff me to another guy, and we go to the Garza unit. And once I go to the Garza unit, they pull me off to the side, and they put me in a cage. And so it's like a kennel, like a big dog kennel they put me in. And they're like, hey, you were on these types of painkillers, and I'm like, yeah, but I got shot, and that's why they had me on painkillers. And they were like, well, there is no painkillers in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. We're gonna have to send you to detox. So they put me on another bus, and they shot me to the Justice 4 unit, which was like a psych unit. And so they sent me to this unit, and they stripped me out of my clothes, and they put me in a single cell. And in this single cell, I didn't have anything. I had a tear-proof blanket. I didn't have any clothing. I remember it was real cold in there, and I think they left it cold because, if you're trying to stay warm, then you're not going to be causing any issues for anybody. So here I am, I'm naked, and I have a tear-proof blanket, and I have a metal bunk, and the only thing they gave me was a roll of toilet paper. And so for this next week, I'm naked and I'm shivering. I'm underneath this blanket, and I'm using this roll of toilet paper as a pillow. And periodically, and then they're they bring us food or whatever they're feeding, and but that's really the only contact that I have with anybody. But this is detox in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. And so every day a nurse or a doctor would come by, and are you a threat to yourself? Are you gonna hurt yourself? Or are you gonna hurt anybody else? And I'm like, no, I'm not gonna hurt anybody. And so I was locked in that cell for about a week, and then I guess they figured that I'm not gonna kill myself, and I'm through detoxing, so they ended up sending me back to Garza unit. Mind you, this is my introduction into prison. At this point, I still haven't heard from my family. I still haven't, I'm just in transit, uncertain of everything that's going to go on. And so I go to the Garza unit, and now I'm introduced to, all these prison gangs, and I'm introduced to the guys from my hometown, and there's all these rules when it comes to race, and when it comes to who you eat with, and who you associate with. And so we're housed in these big stainless steel buildings, and there's no insulation, and so my introduction to getting back to the unit was an officer telling me to get out of them. And when you're told to get out of them, that means you strip totally naked, and they want you to see the bottom of your feet, they want to see the inside of your mouth, they want you to bend over, they want you to cough. So you feel like you get to such a point, it could be 90 degrees outside, and you're getting stripped out, and there's 90 people walking by, or there's visitors walking by, or there's guards, or there's teachers. It could be anybody. And so you're out there, and and they're stripping you, and you get to a point where you just become numb. For a regular individual, there's a certain level of like modesty. You may feel uncomfortable, having to undress in front of somebody else. But, in that circumstance, you kind of become numb. And it can happen during any time. It can happen when it's, 35 degrees, or it can happen when it's 90 degrees. Because I can remember being out there and shivering, and steam coming off of my breath, and goosebumps all over my body, and I'm still having to strip down, just so they can, make sure that I don't have anything on me. And so, and then the whole prison environment, so you're surrounded, you're in these, at the Garza unit, you're in these dorms, and, there's 60 people in those dorms. And when it's hot, it can get, over 100 degrees, and everybody's sweating, and everybody's agitated, and it can be a real dangerous environment. And what's happened is the prison system has grown so much that there's some people that, and as bad as this may sound, like fortunately for me, dealing with all the abuse, and living on the street, and living in a hostile environment, going into prison, it wasn't that difficult on me, because I had to grow up protecting myself. But there's some people that would go to prison that didn't live in that type of situation, and for them, the predators would seek those guys out. And And maybe part of it, I mean, I don't know, I can't understand the psychology. Maybe it was a sense of control, or maybe it was a sense of envy. But to those guys, they'd often be, ridiculed, or they'd be beat up, or they'd be, and as a man, as an individual, it's like you want to do something and you want to say something, but like, how much power are you really given? You may have to go up for, and don't get me wrong, I personally, I've been in situations where, because of the things that I've been through and because of the name that I had, or the way that I carried myself, that there has been times where I've been to put a halt to things. But then there's other times that, I mean, what can you do, when you're outnumbered? And so you're being dehumanized, not only by the environment and by the officers, because at the end of the day, you're not treated like an individual. You're an offender, or you're an inmate, or you're a TDC number, or you're a housing location, but you're not a man, And so, but I couldn't understand that. I didn't understand what dehumanization was. Like, for a person in a situation like that, you're just trying to get through from day to day, and then from there, getting introduced to different prisons. I went to the Win unit, and that place is like 100 years old, and I went to the Coalfield unit, and that place is like a whole 100 years old, and I've been to the Rams unit, and you see these units that have been around for 100 years, and this was back before there was building standards. They were just built to house people. And so you go to places like that where they're covered with rust, and they're covered with broken brick, and there's broken glass everywhere, and there's rats everywhere, and there's roaches everywhere, and you don't have any hot water in your cell, and you're confined with another individual. When it gets 100 degrees, you can smell each other's body odor, and there's so many of you. You may have one officer with 150 people on a wing, and just the whole process of being counted, and just being on a tally, and not seen as a man. Because you got to think, while there is some people that maybe committed some heinous crimes that you can see why they're in prison, there's a lot of guys that they made like poor choices, and now they're stuck in that same kind of category. And so it's real dehumanizing, because you do have people that sober up, and they get a new direction in their life, and they want to go in a different, they want to do something positive, and they want to do something constructive, and they want to help people, but yet those people are treated like everybody else is treated. And so, and I can kind of see it, like even on my own personal journey, even now, I have like these aspirations to be a professor and to teach and to just like do all these things, but still at the end of the day, like, people look at me and they think, one of the first, even, and people look at me and think, what did he do? Like, I've been a guest lecturer at the University of Houston, and so I'm in there with all these students, and one of the main things that they want to know is what sent you to prison. And so I don't know if they're trying so they can put me in a category, and they can treat me accordingly. I mean, I don't. It's hard for me to kind of understand that. Maybe it's curiosity. So, well, getting back to I'm getting off track. Let me get back to dehumanization. And so you're locked in these cells, and the environment is just a caustic type of dirty, filthy environment. There's a lot of IV drug users, so you have people that have HIV, and you have people that have various type of communicable diseases, and hepatitis C, and they're all housed together. You have bunks that are rusty due to humidity and due to sweat. You have walls that sweat, that run with mold. You know, on the Rams unit where I was at, the building's 100 years old, and so you would have raw sewage that would seep underneath your toilet or seep through the walls, or, you know, you're plugging, you know, holes in walls with soap so the roaches don't get in. And maybe you have a sink that doesn't stop running, so you have a, you know, an old shoestring holding it closed. And just, I mean, just the whole environment, it doesn't feel like you're being treated like a person. It feels like you're being treated like an animal. You know, the temperatures get in their hundreds. And I can remember one year where I heard that what happened is they have all these hog barns because they breed hogs in prison. And so what happened is, I don't know, it was the FDA or somebody went into this hog barn, this oversight committee went in this hog barn, and they said this environment is too hot for these hogs. So they gave those hogs, they spent like, I don't know, $1 million on air conditioning for these hogs. Because it's an economic reason, they're gonna make money there. But for the men in prison, you know, that they can, you know, allow them to live in 100+ degree temperature, then that's fine. And then what I noticed, like a lot of people, as they look at the prison system, they say, well, how did this come about? And so you look in society and you think that crime, drug use, you know, beliefs, values, that's all something that's generational, right? Your parents teach you right and wrong. They teach you that, you know, ultimately how you live a constructive life, or the opposite of that, how you live a destructive life. And so within the prison system, it's all generational. So you have one generation officers and their kids come into the system, and then they teach their kids. I've been on units where, you know, the captain of the laundry is married to the building captain, and another captain in the building is married to an officer out in the factory, and the commissary worker is married to the mailroom person. And so you have this whole institution where everybody's interrelated. And so what happens in a situation like that is the justice is relative, because if you mess with my family, right or wrong, now you have to mess with me. And an example of that would be is, you know, they try to plant screwdrivers on my friend Neil Giese. They ended up catching it on videotape, and then they ended up firing the whole administration. You know, from the warden, the assistant warden, the field lieutenant, and you can look it up. Look up Texas major plant screwdrivers on inmate, and you can read the whole. Kerry Blackinger wrote it. You can read the whole article from the Houston Chronicle, and they got charges filed on them. But I just give you that as an example of how corrupt the system is, you know, because everybody's interrelated. And so getting back to dehumanization, so there's this dichotomous relationship between us and them, right? We're felons and they're guards, right? We deserve to be there so they can treat us accordingly. And so with that, it's like, how am I preparing these men for freedom? If I treat them like animals, I mean, are they gonna act like animals? Are they gonna get out of prison and recommit? You know, it's just whole, and I say that because, like, a lot of times I don't think they realize what's going on. I think just like a man gets desensitized to get stripped out in front of, you know, all these people, I think that a lot of people that are involved in that field get desensitized too, right? I mean, it's just a paycheck. I mean, you have a farmer that raises all these chickens. He's not going to name these chickens, you know, because if he names them, it's going to be that much more difficult to kill them. And I think it's the same thing with the inmates. It's better not to get to know us, not to see us as men, because if something goes wrong, then it's just that much easier to just disregard us. And so The point of me like sharing this with you, I think a lot of times when men get out of prison, they just want to forget, right? And then and so, but there's this whole like body of loved ones and friends and that they don't understand like that environment. And so, if you do have a loved one in there, make it a point to write them or make it a point to hook the phone up for them or try to help them out. Because when you're going through this system and it's a dehumanizing, this terrible system, like any light that you get is a real bright light. And I think that was like ultimately like when I put this book together, it was like for me, I wanted to show my friends that prison doesn't define you. You know, that we can do things, we can progress, we can you know, we can do substantial things with the rest of our lives. And just because I know that they need that, because every day they're being mistreated. You know, every day, like this COVID situation, I have had friends that write me that've been locked in the cell for 80 days. And you can't imagine what it is to be locked in the cell for 80 days. You know, you may be eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches 3 times a day. You know, you don't hear from your family. You know, when it's hot, it's hot. You know, you may have a foot, like where I was at, your bunk is a foot away from the toilet. Like there is no getting away from your celly, you know, and people need space. And then you have all these people getting sick, so now you're in fear of your family's all right. Am I gonna be all right? Do I have enough food to make it through the next month? I mean, there's just, and then it's the physical environment. You know, it may be the heat, or you may want to drink some cold water, and none of those things are available. And so I say all that, you know, in the beginning, I wanted to encourage you guys. And so my point in saying all that is for you men that have gotten out of prison and you're not where you want to be, remember where you came from. You know, we have like ample opportunity now. You know, and things aren't always going to go our way, and things, you know, can be difficult, but nothing substantial is created without difficulty. You know, as far as, you know, the people that, you know, log on to Prison of Purpose and the people that listen to these videos, and I hope that, like, I can give you some insight into what those men are going through. And it's just, you know, but at the end of the day, like, we can give people hope. You know, to be out 10 months and to be able to, you know, put a book together and to be able to start a blog, and, you know, God's been so, like, he's blessed me so much, man, to be able to go to the university and speak in classes, and I'm just some guy from the streets, you know, like, so my point in saying that, like, if God can do those things for me, like, he can do those things for anybody. So, you know, and there is a lot of stories in this book, like from the groups of men that I was from, and I wanted to take their stories and I wanted to put it in something, that way you can buy it and you can send it to your loved one and they can be encouraged, man, because in that dark area, like, people need hope. You have to give them hope, man. A person will die without hope. And that hope and that environment, man, it's just a terrible, saddening environment. You take the strongest man, you know, the toughest guy that you think you've ever met, and you put him in one of those cells, and you know, you don't allow him to hear from his children or his family, his loved ones. And I guarantee that man will lay there in tears that night. Some of the coldest killers you'd ever know. And so, and then that grows into hatred, and then that grows into thoughts, and that goes into actions, and you feel like it's me against the world. You know, you just lose hope. So I just encourage all of you to, you know, to pick up this book I encourage you to write your loved ones or your family. I encourage, you know, people that do have opportunities out there when guys are getting out of prison to give those guys an opportunity, man. You know, I encourage everybody to just like be grateful for the things that you have and not go get so sidetracked with life that you lose sight, that you do lose sight of the things that you have, because it's so easy. It's like we want more and more and more and more, and we can't be content. I'm guilty of it too. So anyway, man, I just encourage y'all, and you know, some of my buddies should be coming here pretty soon, and we'll put something together and we'll talk about some more topics. Bye bye.